What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. Now, I don't have a obituary or article in front of me. I'm kind of going off memory here with Norman Lear. I'm pretty familiar with who he was. One of the legendary producers in Hollywood history. You can't say it's a sad or tragic occasion. I mean, anytime a person is blessed with ultra longevity, when that person passes away, it's not a tragedy, but it's still always a melancholy situation. Um, but Norman Lear was 101 years old when he passed away at his home yesterday, and the story broke today. Um, but now, to my recollection, I believe Norman Lear served either in World War II or he served during the Korean War. I think he served during World War II, but I think that's the case. I think I remember him reading about that. But anyway, he got his start in the entertainment industry in the 50s, but he didn't really have his breakout until, I believe, with All in the Family. So this is how I recall it going. He had a pilot which was based on an English sitcom with Archie Bunker and the family. And I think the first pilot, you can find it on YouTube, it was created in 1968, and it had Carol O'Connor as Archie Bunker. It had Gene Stapleton as his wife, Edith. But it was two different actors than the ones that we recognize and know that played Gloria and Mike Stivic. That pilot never got picked up. Then I think it was another pilot done in 1969, and this one had two different actors than the one before playing Gloria and Mike. That one didn't get picked up. Now, I think these pilots were proposed to ABC and maybe NBC, if I'm not mistaken. I know one of them was proposed to ABC. They didn't want to touch the show. That type of television, political speak, talking about certain issues that were taboo at the time, abortion, political talk, pregnancy. That wasn't talked about on TV. Those things were taboo at the time. So then another pilot was done for CBS in 1970. That one was picked up, and it debuted at the end half of the I think it was the 1969-70 season, if I'm not mistaken. Someone can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I think it was the 1969-70 season when it was picked up the second half of that season, and the ratings were not very good. But what helped All in the Family was a couple of things. Number one, at that time, CBS was getting rid of a lot of their rural shows. Like, at that time, CBS had a glut of rural programming. Fred Silverman, who had took over as president of CBS at that time, and had a hell of a streak with CBS in the 1970s, along with Norman Lear, he was getting rid of all of these rural shows. Petticoat Junction, Mayberry RFD, Green Acres, Beverly Hillbillies. If you notice, all those shows ended around that time. He said if it got a tree in it, get rid of it. That was his mantra. So that helped All in the Family that was fresh and new. Then also what helped All in the Family was all of these episodes that had aired in the tail end of that television season re-aired during the summer, and people were watching these episodes and they were liking this show, liking it so much so that the ratings went up exponentially during the second season, and then by the third season, if I'm not mistaken, it was the number one show on television. I mean, it was amazing. Like, All in the Family was averaging 40 to 60 million viewers per episode. I mean, just amazing numbers. But it wasn't just All in the Family that Norman Lear uh, was known for. Norman Lear was known for pretty much inventing the spinoff because, as we all know, there were a couple of spinoffs from All in the Family. Number one, the first one, if I remember correctly, was Maude. Maude, which starred B. Arthur, was a spinoff of All in the Family. That character Maude was Edith's cousin. So a lot of people took a liking to that character from letters and things of that nature that they got from the show. And that created Maude, which aired for several seasons on CBS. Then probably the most successful spinoff of the 70s and maybe of all time was the Jeffersons. Because as we all know, and I didn't know this until I was 19 years old, that the Jeffersons was a spinoff of All in the Family. Until I finally got a chance to watch All in the Family. Then I saw a very young Sherman Hemsley playing George Jefferson and a younger, trying to think of the actress's name. Her name eludes me right now, but the actress that plays Wheezy, I saw them on All in the Family. Then, of course, you had other shows, Fernwood Tonight. Another spinoff of All in the Family was Archie Bunker's Place, Gloria, which wasn't successful. He also did One Day at a Time. He also did the reboot of One Day at a Time, which was just a few years ago. So this man worked well into his 90s. He also was a producer as far as movies. He also did The Princess Bride, which was directed by Rob Reiner, who played the meathead, Mike Stivic. He also, I think, was a producer in a movie called Fried Green Tomatoes. And I think Jessica Tandy was in that movie. Another television show that he did that was very successful was Good Times. All right. Now, to me, I like the first couple of seasons, 2 or 3 seasons of Good Times because of the presence of John Amos. Now, this is where, as much as I've been giving Norman Lear his flowers, this is the one situation where he pissed me off. All right. Look, I don't like what he did to John Amos. Okay? I think that was fucked up. That was fucked up. Okay? There was a wrestling with John Amos, Esther Rolle, and Norman Lear and the writers about how the show was going. If you remember that show, if you watched that show, at the beginning, Mike, the little boy, he was militant. He was very militant. I think the daughter was aspiring to be a dancer. It's been a couple of years since I really religiously watched Good Times. For the most part, JJ was comical, but he was more grounded at the beginning. And what started happening was the Urkel effect with with JJ. JJ started becoming a bit of a caricature with the dynamite and the gesturing and all of the dancing and the hello. He started becoming too comical, and it was taking over the show, and it was taking away from some of the messaging on the show. Then, over time, when they did started toning JJ down as he was getting older, they started making Mike like JJ. I'm like, wait a minute, I thought this was the militant nigga. Now this nigga acting a fucking buffoon. And, that was always a tug of war with John Amos and Esther Rolle, to the point where Esther Rolle left the show. I think a couple of times. She ultimately came back, but they fired John Amos. Because John Amos, not only was he irritated by that, he felt like he wasn't getting paid enough. The problem was John Amos forgot that he won't Carol O'Connor. He wasn't even Red Fox. See, Red Fox had to pull to leave a couple times because he wasn't getting the pay he thought he should be getting. Because one thing about Norman Lear that I read was he was kind of hardball with the money. Carol O'Connor, if you ever watched All in the Family, it was a couple times that it was one season, might have been the fourth season, where Carol O'Connor was written out for a couple episodes, and they came that close to killing his character, but they realized that if they did that, that was going to be the end of the show. So they acquiesced and gave him his money. And then, of course, they came back and did more seasons there. The same thing with Red Fox. Red Fox wanted more money. Those were those episodes when he was having a contract dispute. Those were those episodes when Grady moved in and I promised Fred I would take care of the house. Lamont, I'm in charge. And they was thinking about retooling the show like that, but it wouldn't have worked. So they gave Red Fox his money, the money that he wanted, and that's when he came back. Didn't work with John Amos. They got rid of him. They did the same thing to the first Lionel, Norman Lear. The first Lionel, who used to have a bigger role on All in the Family, got pissed off. And the story goes that I think it was during the latter part of the first season with the Jefferson Show, and he came to Norman Lear and complained about the fact that his role on the show was reducing. And he said, look, I was with you before Sherman Hemsley and why can't I remember her damn name? Not Roxy Roker. Isabel Sanford. I was with you before Isabel Sanford and Sherman Hemsley even came on. You know, my character was before them. And now I'm barely on the show. So he said, you know, he was pretty much threatening to leave. So supposedly Norman Lear asked one of the writers, do you think it's essential that Mike stays on the show? He said, no. Well, you can go. We don't need you. We can recast you. You know? So there was that, you know. And by the way, I also forgot to mention that Norman Lear was involved with the creation of Sanford and Son, which was also based on an English show. I believe the English version was called Steptoe and Son. So, like I told you guys, I love television. That's why I'm always referencing actors, birthdays, and all. This is my forte. I love this shit, man. I grew up watching television, love acting, all of that stuff. So a legend died today. Not a perfect man, but a legend died yesterday in Norman Lear. He was 101 years old.